Today we're going to learn how to draw a mask, and that is just a technical term for saying that we are going to create an invisible object which we'll then place in front of some text in a video. And what the invisible object does is it blocks out the text, which is a pretty interesting effect to use, because when you block out text, you can either have text wipe off the screen, which is the second thing we're going to do, or what you can do is wipe off just enough of the text so that it appears to be behind the subject. Now, of course, doing this can be really tricky. It's going to require a lot of precision and a lot of attention to detail, which are two very difficult skills to master, but they are ultimately very important skills that we need to implement in this class. So instead of just talking about what masks are, how about we just look at what a mask is and then we can see how to do it. So let's take a look.
Hey guys, how are you?
So before we begin talking about how to do what we just saw, I have my two clips and I've already done my audio analysis and tried to clean up the audio as much as I can. I've also layered in my text, which fades in and drops down, as well as the text that just stays in the same place over here. And what you saw earlier was as the door opened, this text wiped across the screen. And what you saw as well as when this text dropped behind dropped down, it appeared to drop behind my head. So this is where the mask comes in. We're going to draw a mask around my head over here so that it appears that the text is falling behind me, but all it's really doing is falling behind an invisible mask which prevents us from seeing it. So let's get going. What we need to do first is open up the effects window. So if you go onto the right-hand side of your screen here, or if you simply hit Command 5, you'll pull up the effects screen. And you can scroll through your effects until you get to masks. And we are going to draw a mask. So what you'll do is click on it, hold it, and then pull it over and drop it onto your text. You can see over here, the plus sign has popped up. The text has grayed out a little bit. That's telling me it's going to the right place. Now, if I click on my text, you'll see under the film strip over here, a new box has appeared on my video inspector. And you see on the screen over here, it says add a control point. So there's two things we need to do. First of all, we're going to change this to B-spline. And what that means is instead of our points connecting to each other directly, it's going to create a curve. Next, I need to make this screen a little bit bigger because it's difficult using a trackpad to really get key points around my head. So I'm going to close the browser. I'm going to pull my timeline down to make this a little bit bigger, and I'm going to increase my view to 200%. So you see over here, there we go. So now I'm going to start drawing a mask. So you can see my text is up here. So I'm going to start by putting these key points around the top of my head. And this is me drawing a mask. And it's important that you get your precision right, because this line that I'm creating around my head is going to be the line that blocks out the text and it makes it appear to be behind my head. So if you don't get this part right, it's not going to look like what we are trying to get. It's important that you select invert mask. You can't quite see it just yet, but I'll show you in a moment. If you have just a regular mask, then what it does is it makes the text invisible and it only appears under the mask. So we see over here, when I pull this mask up, you can see the ER in my name. And that's not what we're doing. We're not looking to have text appear under the mask. We're trying to get text to disappear behind the mask. So you see when I click invert mask, then boom, it now looks like it is behind my head. But the problem here is that I have my text moving. So as the text moves down, so does the mask. So this is where the technical details come in. I need to make sure that I go through this video frame by frame. Yes, frame by frame. And every frame I'm going to transform this mask to move up. So while my text is moving down, my mask is going to move up. So let's get my mask over my head, over here. Okay, I see that Mr. Wheeler still hasn't quite come down far enough. So I'll just keep on moving my playhead, okay, to about this point. So this is where my mask will start coming into play. So I've got my mask over here, my text is coming in. So what I need to do is add keyframes, and this is the key thing. We've been practicing keyframes with our transformations, and basically this is just another kind of transformation. I have transformed my text to move down, and while my text is moving down, I need my mask to move up. And by doing that, the mask will stay in the same place while the text appears to move down. So next, what you'll do is use your arrow key on your keyboard and just move by pressing the arrow key, and you can see I'm going frame by frame. And then since I've already set a keyframe, every time I move this mask, you can see this yellow diamond popped up. And so what I just have to do very slowly and painstakingly is hit the arrow key 2 times so that the keyframe disappears. I've now moved on to a new frame, and I simply move my mask back up again, back to where it was. And then I hit the arrow key 2 times, the keyframe disappears, and I have to move it up again. And that's really what we do. I have to do that over and over again from where my playhead is now to this point where the marker is. So here we go. I did a quick pass through the first time, and now I'm going back and I have the mask turned off. And this is actually quite a good way to deal with your mask, because I can get a better look of where the keyframes are a little bit off. So over here you can see that the R is resting perfectly on my head, except for like a place like that. So I just need to go through, and when you have the mask on, it can be a little bit tricky to see exactly where the line is. But by turning it off, I can see it in real time and make minor adjustments. So by going through and making sure that my x-axis didn't change, I was being a little bit careless in my first run through. I now have a very smooth and clean mask appearing. And as you can see, when this ER falls behind my head, it really looks like it's falling behind my head. Now, there's going to be a little bit more difficulty here, because when I turn my head and move, the shape changes. Now, you might think to yourself, okay, well, I just need to now move the mask to the right. And that's one thing that you need to do, but you also need to change the shape of the mask. And now we need to introduce more keyframes. If we don't set a keyframe for our mask to keep the same shape, then when we change the shape over here, it will also change the shape back in the beginning. And then we'll mess up this cool, smooth slip behind the head. So we have to be careful and make sure that we set our keyframes, because when I turn my head, I'm going to change these control points over here, and these need to be keyframed. So as we can see here, I've turned my head and there's a bit of a gap coming into our text. So we need to then make sure that we set our beginning keyframes. So we're not going to change anything before this. And now I just need to highlight some of these guys and pull them over. Now this can be kind of tricky because if you try to move them on top of the text, then you move the text, which is a little bit obnoxious, but we just have to be very gentle with where we decide to pull from and just very gently pull that over. Like that. And then eventually, I should be able to simply pull the mask along with me. So as we can see here, now that the back of my head is flattened out, these curves over here are causing too much of a gap. So I need to highlight those. I'm going to pull this over here. I'm going to highlight these and just pull them in a little bit like that. There we go. So it's kind of frustrating that you can't edit these dots on top of the text, but we're going to make it work. And I don't have a weird dent in the back of my head. The back of my head is pretty flat. So I can just do that. And now it's smooth sailing from here because all I need to do with the flattened part of the back of my head is just pull this mask over. See, I'm kind of getting my neck. And luckily I'm walking away pretty fast, so there aren't that many frames that we need to worry about. But it's all these small details. At the beginning of this video, I said that doing this kind of exercise is hard. And I think the reason why it's so hard is because you really, really have to pay attention to what you're doing, and you have to go really slowly. But the end result, I think, is pretty neat. And if you can get the end result, if you can just get that mask to change as you move around, then I think we can see that it looks pretty good. All right, so that's the difficult one. We got through it. Now we can close out this assignment with the much easier one, which is simply pulling a mask across this text as the door opens in a very straight, direct line. So now we are on the final stretch. So I have my text on top of my screen, and as you can see, my door opens and I walk in. And what I would like to happen is I want to insert a mask, so as my door comes across this text, it is going to wipe it, as if the door is wiping the text out the way. So as usual, we are going to go into the Effects browser and scroll down to Masks until we find a Draw Mask, and I'll drag that onto my text, and you'll see the plus sign there telling me I'm adding it, and then I'll go to my film strip, and here we go. I'm going to draw my mask. So I've set a marker here already because this is going to be the point that everything begins. We're going to keep this one linear because all we're going to do is just draw a box around the text and drag it from the right to the left, and that's it. This is easy compared to what we just did. So here we go. I'm going to create a box. I'm going to make sure that my text is highlighted. It says click to add a control point, and so I shall 1, 2, 3, 4, and then bring it back to the beginning again, and that is my box. So I've drawn my box, and as you can see, when the box is typically over it, that's when it reveals the text. we want to invert the mask so that when we pull the mask across the text, it is going to wipe the text. So I'm just going to simply pull this box out of the way. I'm going to nestle it right next to the door frame here. And actually, if I get my view right, what I should be able to do is get my control points exactly on the door frame. All right, there we go, straight line. So, as we did like with last time, we are going to go frame by frame. So the first thing I need to do is set a keyframe. Remember, this is me telling the mask, this is where you start, right here. And then every time I move the mask, it is just going to generate its own keyframes. So the key thing is inserting this keyframe first before you begin. So we have what we need. So now we just simply need to go through the process of using the arrow keys on your keyboard and go one frame at a time and then pulling the mask across. I've lined it up with the door frame, so as long as you keep your mask on this edge of the door frame, it will wipe the text as it goes. So let's do this. And that is it. So as we can see, as I open the door, it slowly moves across in line with the door and wipes it from the screen. So let's look at this in real time. So that is it. I have now created two masks, one that simply moves across the screen and the other that goes behind my head. Now the one more thing that we need to do here is we need to clean this up. I want this to cut on me opening the door. So you can see over here, I'm going to find the point where I'm opening the door. I'm going to put a marker key here, and I'm going to drag this over and drag this over. And then similarly, I'm going to find where the door opens here. If you pay attention to the waveforms, you can see where the door is starting to open. All right, so this is my point. Let's take a look at how this looks. And that is our video project, everyone. From here, you need to add some titles to the end of your video. And we know how to do that by now, I hope. I like to use the drifting. So I'll put this down here. And that's it, we're done. So I know that this is a very difficult and tricksy assignment to do, especially the first half where we had to get the text behind my head. But otherwise, once you know how to do this, I think that you can use it for a lot of interesting effects in your own videos. So now that we got through this gauntlet and we figured out how to make this work, you now have learned how to use masks to cover up text. And the only thing that limits you from here is your own imagination. So I look forward to seeing your videos from here on out.